The beast broke free, then guarded the human student like its own. The alarms died at 2:14, not the kind of dying where they slow and fade. The cut-off kind. 1 second, the containment breach klaxon was shaking the walls of Xenobiology Research Station Kepler-9. The next second, silence. Nora Calloway pressed herself against the observation corridor wall and counted to 3. The emergency lights came on, red, everything red. The corridor stretched 40 meters ahead of her, all glass and steel, and the kind of institutional quiet that meant something had gone very wrong in a very large way. She had been heading back to her dormitory from Lab Block C with a datapad full of behavioral notes on the station's apex containment subject. She was 3 corridors from her room. She was also 3 corridors from Enclosure 7. She was not going to think about Enclosure 7 right now. Down the corridor, the security door at Junction 4 was sealed. The one behind her was also sealed. Lockdown protocol had dropped every blast door on the station the moment the breach alert fired. She was in a sealed corridor segment with a window on one side that looked into the outer observation deck, a wall on the other side, and nowhere to go. Her datapad still worked. She pulled up the station map. Enclosure 7 was 400 meters from her current position. The containment grid for Enclosure 7 had gone offline 8 minutes ago. The containment grid for Enclosure 7 housed 1 occupant. Nora put the datapad in her bag. Right then, she had been a xenobiology exchange student at Kepler-9 for 7 months. In those 7 months, she had cataloged feeding behaviors in 11 alien species, assisted Dr. Felix Aldrich with 3 research papers, and spent approximately 240 hours in the observation room adjacent to Enclosure 7 watching a creature that the station's official documentation classified as a Velkar apex predator. Designation K7, threat level maximum, approach with extreme caution, do not make direct eye contact, do not make sudden sounds. Do not under any circumstances enter the enclosure. She had done none of those things. She had also talked to it every day for 7 months. The station comm crackled. Security Chief Owen Marsh's voice came through, flat and clipped. All personnel, this is a full containment emergency. K7 has breached primary and secondary enclosure barriers. All non-security staff are to shelter in place. Do not attempt to navigate the corridors. Do not approach K7 under any circumstances. Station security is currently tracking the subject and will neutralize the threat. Stay where you are. Nora noted the word neutralize. She noted it very carefully. The lights in the corridor flickered. Then something at the far end of the sealed junction moved. Not through the door. The door was sealed, reinforced blast steel rated for atmospheric breach. Nothing moved through that door. The something moved through the wall beside it. The wall cracked first, a single fracture line running floor to ceiling. Then the wall buckled inward like it had decided it was not very committed to being a wall anymore. A panel of it hit the floor. The sound was enormous. Then a second panel. Then a section the size of a transport vehicle simply came apart. And K7 stepped through. 14 feet of it. Obsidian-scaled, 6-limbed, low to the ground in the way that big predators move when they are not hurrying because they do not need to. Its forward 2 limbs were longer than the others, knuckle-walking, the claws on them leaving shallow gouges in the station floor with each step. Its head was broad and flat with 4 yellow eyes arranged in a horizontal line, all of them forward-facing, all of them seeing in the dark perfectly. All of them now looking directly at Nora. She did not run. Running was the worst possible choice, and she knew it, and her legs wanted to do it anyway, and she told her legs to have some patience. She stood completely still. K7 stopped moving. The 2 of them existed in the red-lit corridor together, for a moment that lasted approximately 9,000 years. Then Nora said quietly, "Hello, 7." K7's head tilted, a very small tilt. The same tilt it made in the observation room when she said something it appeared to find interesting. Down the corridor behind K7 she heard boots, heavy ones, running, security team converging on the breach point. K7 heard them too. Its posture changed, not toward Nora, away from her. It turned just slightly, putting its enormous body between her and the sound of the approaching footsteps, and lowered its head, and made a sound deep in its chest that she had heard before only once in month 3, when a maintenance drone had gotten too close to its enclosure, and it had warned the drone away. The sound meant back off. It was not saying it to Nora. Nora stood behind 14 feet of the most dangerous creature in the known catalog of sentient alien life forms and thought, very clearly, I should have mentioned this to Dr. Aldrich. The security team rounded the junction corner and stopped. Owen Marsh was at the front. He had a containment weapon raised. He looked at K7. He looked past K7 to Nora. Something moved across his face that was not quite relief and not quite horror but lived somewhere between them. "Calloway," he said very carefully, "do not move." "I am not moving," she said. "I am perfectly fine." K7 growled again, low, steady, a warning that had all the time in the world. Owen Marsh did not move either. And that was how the situation stood, in the red-lit corridor of Kepler 9 Research Station, at 2:19 on a Tuesday, with one human student and one maximum threat alien predator on the same side of a standoff. Nora thought, this is going to need a lot of explanation. She thought, I will need to choose my words very carefully. She thought, 7, please do not eat anyone. Owen did not lower the weapon. That was the part Nora kept watching. His team of 6 had fanned out in the corridor behind him, all weapons raised, all of them very carefully, not making any sudden movements. K7 had not moved either. It stood with its back to Nora and its 4 yellow eyes tracking the security team in a slow, methodical sweep, like it was counting them. Like it was deciding. "Calloway," Owen said again, the same flat tone, "I need you to move toward the left wall. Slowly. Get low." Nora looked at the left wall. She looked at K7's flank 6 inches from her right shoulder. "If I move," she said, 7 moves. "I do not think that is what you want. You are not in a position to be making tactical assessments right now. I am the only person in this corridor who is currently not being growled at," she said. "I think that gives me some standing." One of the security officers made a short, involuntary sound that might have been a laugh in a different universe. Owen silenced him with a look. K7's growl had not stopped. It was continuous, low, a frequency that Nora felt more in her ribs than her ears. She had studied that sound for months. In her behavioral notes, she had labeled it the threshold vocalization. K7 only used it at the edge of an action it had not yet decided to take. It was deciding right now. "Owen," she said, "lower your weapons." "Absolutely not. I am asking you to trust me. You are a second-year exchange student. I am the only person on this station who has spent 240 hours in that observation room. Lower your weapons." The station comm crackled. Director Crane's voice, higher than usual, came through. "Security team, what is your status? Do you have a visual on K7? What is the student's condition?" "Student is unharmed," Owen said, keeping his eyes on K7. "K7 is in a defensive posture. Advise on protocol." "Neutralize the subject," Crane said. "No pause, no hesitation. Immediately." Nora's stomach went cold. K7 moved. Not toward the security team. It turned fully and looked at Nora. 4 yellow eyes, 6 inches from her face. Up close this way, she could see the fine structure of the scales around its eye ridges, the way the red emergency light caught the texture of them. She had seen it this close exactly once before, in month 2, when she had pressed her hand against the observation glass, and it had come to the glass and looked at her hand for a long time. She had written 12 pages of notes about that moment. Now it looked at her face. Nora looked back. "I know," she said very quietly so the security team could not hear. "I know what they said. I am not going anywhere." Something in K7's posture shifted. The growl stopped. The silence was worse. Then K7 did something that was not in any of the station's behavioral documentation. Not in any of the 14 research papers she had read about the species, not in anything. It lowered its head until its broad, flat skull was approximately level with her chest, and it held it there. It was not an attack posture. Nora knew all of K7's attack postures. She raised her hand. Behind her she heard Owen say, sharp and low, "Calloway, do not." She put her hand on top of K7's head. The scales were warm, not the cold she had expected from obsidian dark plating, warm and finely ridged under her palm and absolutely still. K7 did not move. It breathed, a slow, steady pull of breath, and she felt the vibration of it under her hand. She breathed too. Right, she said to herself, to Seven, to the universe in general. Right. Then the explosion hit the East Corridor junction. Not the security team's weapons, something else, from outside. The station shuddered, a full-body shudder, and the lights cut entirely for 3 seconds before the backup power caught them and brought the emergency reds back up. Nora grabbed K7's neck ridge to keep from falling. K7 planted all 6 limbs and did not move at all. Owen's comm erupted, multiple voices cutting over each other. Hull contact, East Quadrant external. Station is being boarded. Repeat, external boarding. Signatures are Kreth Raider class, 3 ships. They are cutting through. Owen said one word that was not appropriate for the station's official report and then snapped to his team. Pull back to the command hub. Move. He looked at Nora. The calculation on his face was fast and visible. Calloway, come with us. 7 comes with us. The creature is. K7 turned its head and looked at Owen. Owen closed his mouth. 7 comes, Nora said. They ran. Kreth Raiders were not a mystery to anyone who had spent time at research stations on the outer systems. They hit stations during containment emergencies. They had been doing it for 11 years. The method was always the same. Wait for an internal crisis to draw station resources inward, board from the east hull where the sensor coverage had a gap, strip the labs of anything valuable, and leave fast. They did not usually hurt anyone. They also did not usually encounter a 14-foot apex predator running freely through the corridors. Nora suspected this would change their approach. She was right. The first Raider team they encountered was 4 of them, armed. Rounding the corner toward Lab Block C, they stopped when they saw the security team. They stopped harder when they saw what was running beside the security team. K7 did not stop. It put itself between the Raider team and Nora and made a sound that was not the threshold vocalization. Something else. Something Nora had never heard in 7 months of observation. She wrote a mental note. New vocalization category, high urgency, categorized later if alive. The Raiders ran. K7 did not chase them. It turned back, found Nora immediately in the group and fell into position at her left side. Owen, running beside her, looked at that for a long second. It is protecting you, he said, not a question. I noticed, she said. How? I talked to it. Owen ran in silence for 4 steps. You talked to it. Every day for 7 months. And that, he stopped himself. They took a hard left at Junction 7. We will discuss this later. Brilliant plan, she said. Ahead of them the corridor opened into the secondary hub. The hub's blast doors were still sealed. Owen punched in his override code. The doors ground open. The security team filed through. Nora moved through. K7 stopped at the door. The door frame was wide enough, but K7 stood at the threshold and looked at the sealed space beyond it, at the people in it, at Owen's team, at the 2 station technicians already sheltering there, at the walls and ceiling and the reduced space. An enclosure. Nora turned back. She stood in the doorway. 7, she said. K7 looked at her. I know what it looks like, she said. I know. She held its gaze. But I am going to be on the other side of it, and I am not leaving without you. K7 stepped through the door. Owen sealed it behind them. He leaned against the wall. He looked at Nora for a long moment. Second-year exchange student, he said. Yes, she said. Right. The Raiders did not wait long. Nora had been counting on 30 minutes. She got 8. The secondary hub had 2 entry points. Owen had sealed both with override codes. The raiders had cutting equipment rated for military hull plating. The math was not favorable. Owen had 6 officers, 2 station technicians named Petra and Callum, 1 second-year xenobiology student, and 1 creature that every threat assessment document on the station categorized under the heading "Do not engage under any circumstances." He was quietly revising his situation analysis. "How many raiders do you estimate?" he asked the room. One of his officers, a compact woman named Diana, had patched into the station's internal sensor net. 14 confirmed, possibly more still on the ships. Weapons. Pulse rifles, cutting equipment, 2 with heavy stun units. She paused. No lethal rounds that I can see. They are here to take, not to hurt anyone. Let us keep it that way, Owen said. K7 was in the corner farthest from the door, sitting in the way that large predators sit when they are not sleeping but not resting either, fully alert, every line of its body oriented toward the entry point. Its 4 eyes had not blinked in 3 minutes. Nora knew this because she had been watching. She was also watching the entry point. The cutting started at minute 9, a high whine of metal against metal, moving in a slow circle. One of the technicians, Callum, a thin man with graying hair and the careful stillness of someone who had been through emergencies before, moved to stand near the far wall. Petra stood next to him. Neither of them looked at K7. Nora had noticed that neither of them had looked at K7 since the moment it entered the hub. She did not blame them. "When they get through," Owen said quietly, "everyone stays low and stays back. My team handles contact. Nora, you stay with the creature and keep it from engaging." 7, she said. Owen looked at her. "Its name is 7. He exhaled. "Keep 7 from engaging." "I can try," she said. "I cannot promise." "What does it respond to?" "My voice, my presence, calm." "So if this stops being calm, then we find out how K7 feels about raiders." Owen considered this. "Let us try to keep it calm." The cutting stopped. That was worse than when it was going. The silence meant they were done. The entry point door blew inward. 4 raiders came through fast, weapons up, covering the room in a clean practice sweep. They were wearing visors and light body armor and moving with the efficiency of people who had done this in a lot of stations and expected it to go the same way it always went. It stopped going the same way when K7 stood up. It unfolded to its full height in the corner of the room, and all 4 raiders stopped moving. One of them took a step backward. Another one made a sound that was not a word. K7 looked at them. The raiders looked at K7. Owen said, level and steady, "Station security. Put down your weapons. You are in a containment zone with an active apex predator. Any discharge of weapons in this room risks provoking it." The raider at the front, a broad man with a jaw like a cargo ramp, kept his weapon up. "Your predator is chained to that girl," he said, nodding toward Nora. His accent was clipped outer system. His tone was doing the careful math of someone trying to stay in control of a situation he had not planned for. "It will not move without her order." Nora felt K7's weight shift slightly beside her. It had moved to her left side when the door blew. "You have been watching us," she said. "Long enough," the raider said. "Station is half locked down. Your security team is split across 3 zones. We just want the research data in Lab Block C and we will be gone." His eyes moved to K7. "Keep your companion calm and nobody has a bad day." "Lab Block C is sealed," Owen said. "You cannot access it without station command authorization." "We have a slicer," the raider said. "We will manage." "The slicer will take you 20 minutes on a Class 5 lock," Diana said. "You do not have 20 minutes. The raider's jaw moved slightly, doing his own math. Then 2 more raiders came through the entry. They were half carrying a third. This one was a younger man, light armor, and he was moving badly, favoring his left side, his face tight with pain. He was also looking at K7 with the wide, fixed stare of someone who had decided to stop processing new information. "What happened?" the broad raider said. "One of the other creatures," the young raider said. "In the corridor, not this one. Something in Lab Block B, the holding units are open, there are other things loose." He stopped, swallowed. "A lot of other things." The room recalibrated. Nora looked at Owen. Owen's face did not change, but his eyes moved to Diana. "The containment grid failure," Diana said quietly. "It was not just K7's enclosure. The whole system went down, all holding units." "How many subjects in Lab Block B?" Nora asked. 14, Owen said. Lab Block B held the station's secondary research subjects. Most of them were small and non-aggressive. 3 of them were not small. 2 of those 3 were extremely aggressive. The broad raider looked at Owen. Something had changed in his posture. The calculation was different now. "We have a mutual problem," Owen said. "We are not working with station security." "You came here for data in Lab Block C," Owen said. "Lab Block C is between here and whatever is now loose in those corridors. You cannot get to it without going through them. We cannot get to the rest of our people without going through them either." He paused. "Your choice." The raider was quiet for 4 seconds. "You want my team." "I want bodies between my people and the Block B subjects. You want to get to Lab Block C and get out. Those goals are compatible." Nora watched K7 during this exchange. It had tracked every person in the room, every word, every movement. She did not know how much of human language the Velkar could parse. The research documentation said, none. The documentation had also said K7 had never bonded with any organism in captivity. She leaned slightly toward it. "We are going back out there," she said very quietly. K7's head dipped once, a motion she recognized. She had noted it in month 4. It appeared to occur when she said something it had already understood. "Stay close to me," she said. "We will be okay." The broad raider, whose name she still did not know, looked at her talking to K7 and then looked away. Like he had decided that was information he was not ready for. Owen said, "Move out in 2 minutes. Everyone stays together. We get to Lab Block C Junction. Your team does what it needs to do. We continue to command Hub." "Agreed," the raider said. It was a terrible plan. It was the only plan. Nora checked the strap of her bag. Datapad still there. She thought briefly about the behavioral notes inside it. 240 hours of observation. 7 months of watching something that everyone else had written off as unknowable. She thought, "I should have started taking notes an hour ago." K7 moved to her left side and matched her pace as they headed toward the door. The corridor outside was dark. The kind of dark that meant something had taken out the backup power on this wing. From somewhere deeper in the station, something made a sound that was not K7's sound, not any sound she recognized, and it was not quiet. They moved. Lab Block B was open. Not open the way a door is open. Open the way something that used to be a door is open when the door no longer exists in any meaningful structural sense. The frame was intact. The blast door itself was on the floor of the corridor in pieces. Owen said nothing. His team moved to flanking positions without being told. The broad raider, who had given his name as Leon somewhere between the secondary hub and Junction 4, stood next to Owen and looked at the destroyed door. "Your containment systems are poor quality," he said. "The containment grid failed because someone boarded my station," Owen said. Leon did not respond to this. Nora was watching K7. It stood at the front of the group, 1 step ahead of her, its body fully alert in the way she now understood meant it was processing information she could not receive. Sound, scent, vibration, things 7 months of observation had taught her to read in its posture even without understanding the mechanism. Its attention was toward the left branch of Lab Block B. "Left branch," she said. Owen looked at her. "You are reading it." "I have been reading it for 7 months. He nodded once. "Left branch, 2 officers forward, Diana on sensors." Diana had managed to get a partial uplink to the station's internal camera network. Partial was generous. 40% of the cameras on this wing were dark. I have 2 heat signatures, she said. One is large, very large, it is not moving. It is at the far end of the left branch. She paused. The other is smaller and moving fast, coming toward us. Owen had his weapon up. His team had their weapons up. The raiders had their weapons up. K7 was still. That was what told Nora everything. K7 was the apex of every food chain the Velkar species had ever occupied. It was not still because it was uncertain. It was still because it was waiting, choosing exactly when and how it would move. Whatever was coming down, the left branch arrived before anyone had finished processing the thought. It was a Shreth. Nora knew the species from the research documentation. Lab Block B's holding manifest listed 1 Shreth, designation B4, brought in for locomotive study 6 weeks ago. 2 meters at the shoulder, 4-limbed, armored carapace, normally manageable in captivity. What the documentation had not adequately conveyed was the speed. The Shreth came around the corner at a velocity that did not seem physically reasonable for something its size. 3 weapons discharged simultaneously. Stun pulses. They caught the Shreth across the carapace and it staggered, skidding sideways into the corridor wall, leaving a scar in the plating. It did not go down. It found its footing. It looked at the group. K7 moved. It did not go around the group. It went through the space between Nora and Leon, low and fast in a way that should not have been possible for a 14-foot creature, and put itself between the group and the Shreth. The Shreth stopped. 2 large predators in a corridor, 3 meters apart, and the air between them doing something that Nora could only describe as having weight. The Shreth made a sound. K7 answered it. Not the threshold vocalization, not the warning growl it had used on Owen's team, something else. Lower, slower, a series of sounds spaced deliberately. Nora was taking mental notes, so fast she could not keep up with herself. The Shreth was still. K7 made the sound again. The Shreth took 1 step back, then another. Then it turned, not in a panic, with a strange kind of deliberateness, and moved back down the corridor. The corridor went quiet. Nobody moved for 3 seconds. Leon said, very carefully, "Did it just?" "Tell it to leave," Nora said. "Creatures of different species do not." "I know what the literature says." Owen lowered his weapon slowly. "What did you say, Nora?" "I do not know yet, but I am going to figure it out." She looked at K7, which had returned to her left side. "I am going to need better recording equipment." They reached Lab Block C junction without further contact. Leon's team broke away, moving efficiently toward the lab with their slicing equipment. Owen's team continued toward the command hub. Nora stayed with Owen. Director Crane was already in the command hub when they arrived. He was a tall man, narrow through the shoulders, with the kind of face that was designed for administrative authority and had not been tested recently by anything real. He looked at Owen's team when they came through the hub door. He looked at Nora. He looked at K7. "That creature," he said, "needs to be recontained immediately." "With what?" Owen said. "The containment grid is down." "Then use manual restraints. Use anything. Get it contained." K7 looked at Crane, just looked at him. Crane stepped back 1 step and appeared not to notice that he had done so. "The creature has been cooperating," Owen said. "It has not engaged any station personnel. It may in fact have prevented significant injury by managing the B4 Shreth in Corridor 7. "It is a maximum threat subject," Crane said. "Yes," Owen said. "It is being very cooperative for a maximum threat subject." Nora said, "Director, the raiders are still in Lab Block C. We have multiple containment subjects still loose in Block B. 2 of them are serious threats. K7 has shown willingness to manage other loose subjects. If you attempt to restrain K7 right now, you lose that capability, and you risk a response none of us want." Crane looked at her. "You are a student. I am the person who kept that creature calm for the last 2 hours while your security team's hands were full." She kept her voice level, even, the way she had learned to keep her voice in the observation room. I am also the person who has more field data on K7's behavior than any other living researcher, as of approximately 90 minutes ago. I am suggesting you let me help. Crane's face moved through several expressions. None of them settled. The council is going to want a full explanation for this breach, he said. The council is going to want a full explanation for a lot of things, Owen said. Outside the command hub, something in the station made a sound. Not the Shreth. The other Block B subject, the one Diana's sensors had clocked as very large and stationary. It was no longer stationary. Nora could tell by the change in K7's attention. The slight adjustment of its head, the focus shifting toward the corridor outside the hub. That is B11, Diana said, checking her sensor feed. Arvith species, 6 meters. It was in induced sedation for a locomotion study. The sedation wore off. How long before it reaches this position? Owen asked. 12 minutes at its current speed, less if it accelerates. Nora looked at K7. K7 was already looking at the hub door. I need to go back out there, Nora said. Crane said, absolutely not. K7 can manage the Arvith the way it managed the Shreth, but it will not go out there without me. You do not know that. She looked at him. Yes, I do. Owen said quietly, she is right, Director. I have been watching it. It will not go 10 feet from her. Crane looked at K7, at Nora, at Owen. He looked like a man, running out of alternative options very quickly. Go, he said. Nora went. K7 was already at the door. The Arvith was in the main corridor junction when they found it. 6 meters of it. Wide, slow-moving, built like architecture that had decided to go for a walk. It had a shell casing of bone-white plates layered over a body that moved in segments, and 4 eyes mounted on independent stalks, and it was turning in a slow circle in junction 5-like. It was trying to understand how it had arrived somewhere this confusing. Nora watched it from 20 meters away. K7 stood at her left and watched it too. It is disoriented, she said, quietly, more to herself than to K7. The sedation is wearing off slowly. It does not know where it is. The Arvith made a low grinding sound. One of its eye stalks turned toward them. K7 made a sound. Not the sound it had made at the Shreth. Slower. A different pattern of frequencies, longer gaps between each unit. Nora stood completely still and listened to it with every part of her attention, trying to map it against everything she had heard from K7 over 7 months. She had 12 categories in her notes. This was not any of them. This was a 13th. The Arvith stopped turning. It made a sound in return, very different in quality from K7's, rougher, a grinding quality, but the rhythm of it matched something. Call and response. A structure that had structure. K7 answered again. The Arvith's eye stalks came down from their alert position, one by one, until all 4 were low and resting. Its movement slowed. It came to a stop. It's sad. If you could call what an Arvith did sitting. It lowered its mass to the floor in a way that suggested it intended to stay there. Nora let out a breath she had been holding for approximately 3 minutes. Right then, she said. Owen's voice came through her earpiece. He had given her a comm unit before she left the hub. We are tracking on sensors. B11 is stationary. What did K7 do? It talked to it, she said. A pause. Could you be more specific? Not yet, give me time. She looked at K7. It was watching the Arvith with what she had catalogued 7 months ago as a monitoring posture, alert but not aggressive, keeping watch. She said, you have been doing this a long time, have you not? K7 turned its head and looked at her. Not just with me, she said. Before, wherever you were before they brought you here. The Velkar documentation said, non-social apex predator, solitary, no evidence of interspecies communication, no evidence of group behavior. She thought the documentation was written by people who watched through glass and never said hello. The raider ships detached from the hull at hour 3. Leon's team had gotten what they came for and cleared out before station reinforcements arrived from Kepler 7. Owen filed a report. The report was detailed. It was also missing certain specific details about the collaboration in Corridor 7 that Owen had decided, quietly, not to formally document. Nora appreciated this. Kepler 7's response team arrived with a containment specialist and 2 additional security units. The containment specialist was a woman named Dr. Grace Hollies, mid-40s, the kind of calm that comes from having dealt with worse things in worse places. She came into the command hub and looked at K7, which was sitting next to Nora's chair while Nora ate a meal bar, and looked at the documentation on her datapad, and then looked at Nora. "You are the exchange student," she said. "Second year," Nora said. Dr. Hollies pulled up a chair and sat down. "Tell me everything." She was a good listener. She did not interrupt. She did not write on her datapad while Nora talked, which Nora appreciated. She listened the way researchers listen when they are encountering something that requires them to revise a framework they have held for a long time. When Nora finished, Dr. Hollies was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "The Velkar have been classified non-social for 30 years based on observations of solitary wild specimens." "Solitary does not mean non-social," Nora said. "It might mean their social range is very large. We have been studying captive specimens in enclosures too small for their actual behavior to express." "And you concluded this from 7 months in an observation room." "I concluded it from watching what happens when you talk to something every day, and it listens." Dr. Hollies looked at K7. "It initiated the protective behavior. From the first moment in the corridor, I did not ask it to. But you had established a relationship. Over 7 months, yes. And you think that is why." Nora chose her next words carefully. "I think 7 made a choice. I think it made that choice based on 7 months of deciding I was worth making it for. And I think the implications of that for how we classify and study the Velkar are significant." She paused. "I wrote most of it up on my datapad last night. I would like to submit it as a formal research document." Dr. Hollies looked at her for a long moment, then at K7. The creature was watching Dr. Hollies with calm, steady attention, not threatening, just watching. "The council meeting is in 4 hours, Dr. Hollies said. Director Crane will recommend permanent recontainment with a revised threat assessment." "I know. He will also recommend your disciplinary review for unauthorized engagement with a containment subject." "I know that too. Do you want to address the council?" Nora looked at K7, then back at Dr. Hollies. "Yes," she said. The council chamber of Kepler 9 held 7 chairs and currently held 5 people, since 2 council members were attending remotely. Director Crane was there. Dr. Felix Aldrich, her professor, was there, and he gave her a look when she walked in that contained apology and pride and a great deal of something she read as I knew it. I absolutely knew it. She gave him a small nod. K7 stood at the chamber door. The chamber door was wide. It stood at the threshold in the corridor and looked in. Nora stood at the center of the room. She told them everything. Clean and direct, no extra words, the way she had been trained to report in the lab and the way she had learned to move in a crisis. What K7 had done, when it had done it, how, what she had observed over 7 months that she believed had made it possible, what she believed it meant for Velkar classification. One council member, an older man named Victor, leaned forward. "You are asking us to revise a 30-year classification of a maximum threat species based on one incident and the behavioral notes of a second-year student." "I am asking you to look at the data," she said. "The classification was based on 30 years of observations made through reinforced glass by researchers who did not interact with the subjects. That is not a complete data set. It is a data set with a structural gap in it. The structural gap being, nobody talked to them." The room was quiet. Victor said, "You are suggesting the Velkar are communicative." "I am suggesting 7 is. I am suggesting the data supports investigating whether that extends to the species. Director Crane said, the creature's behavior during the crisis was unpredictable. That alone justifies. It was not unpredictable, Nora said. It was consistent with every behavioral pattern I've documented over 7 months. The crisis did not change how K7 behaves. It made that behavior visible to people who had not been paying attention. Silence again. Dr. Hollies, who was seated at the outer edge of the room, said nothing. She was writing on her datapad. Victor looked at K7 in the doorway. K7 looked back at him. It has been standing there the whole time, Victor said. It will not come in without me asking it to, Nora said, and I have not asked it to. Why not? She looked at K7, then back at Victor. Because it is a choice, she said. It's choice. I'm not going to override that for a room full of people who are not sure yet whether it deserves one. The room absorbed this. Victor looked at the creature in the doorway for a long moment. Then he looked at his datapad. Dr. Hollies, he said, I would like to see the student's formal research submission. Dr. Hollies transferred it across the network to his pad. The chamber was quiet while he read. Nora waited. K7 waited with her. It had been doing that, she realized. Waiting. Not because it had nowhere to go. Not because she had asked it to. It had been waiting because she was here and it had decided, on a specific Tuesday night when a corridor turned red and a wall came apart and a small human did not run, that wherever she was would be the place it stayed. That was the whole of it. Victor looked up from the datapad. We will convene a formal review panel, he said. The research submission will be included in the materials. He paused. In the interim, K7's classification is suspended pending that review. He looked at Director Crane. Crane said nothing. Victor said the student stays on station as a research lead. Nora looked at Felix. Felix looked like a man trying very hard not to say I told you so. She turned toward the chamber door. 7, she said. K7's head lifted. Come on, she said. It stepped through the door. She had a feeling she would spend years trying to explain what happened in those 4 hours on a Tuesday. She had a feeling the data would do most of the explaining for her. She had a feeling that years from now, when the formal review was done and the classification was revised and the papers were published, someone would ask her when she first knew. And she would say, month 2, when I pressed my hand on the glass and it came to look at what I was doing. 7 was always listening. The rest of them just did not know what to say.